Some 8 or 9 years ago, I was spending the night sitting on the trunk of my car, listening to sad, overly dramatic songs, and wondering why everyone but me was able to go out and meet new people and build connections. I spent a lot of time like that, entire nights wasted on ideas of how bonds formed and dreams of what it would be like, and very little time actually thinking about how it could be achieved. After all, that was harder than just brooding over it. And then last month, I was dancing with strangers in an abandoned lot party, delighting in the attention of people who clearly wanted a bit more than conversation and having the joyful energy to keep it up all night. And in the months before that, I made it a habit of meeting strangers and talking the night away at a local arcade bar. And I mean habit. I was doing it while working 70-hour weeks, being there 3 weekends minimum each month when this happened. I don't bring this up to brag, but to provide context. I used to be a very lonely person, desperately seeking the attention of others, and in many ways, I still am. But I was able to have those nights because of some active decisions on my part to go out and create the situations for connection. So today I wanted to dig into that topic. How do you start making connections from nothing?
This is a topic that I've been wanting to do for a while because we all had a bit of an excuse for social and mental backslide some 4 years ago. But I never quite had the format to do it with until I finally caught up and watched Bocchi the Rock, the fantastic slice of life, social anxiety overload, girls in a band anime from a couple years back. When you see a main character pick up guitar because they just want to be more popular, and think back on how you had your dirtbag friends teach you power chords in 10th grade for the same reason, it feels a bit more personal than usual. Bocchi, or Hitori, is an unremarkable high school girl with genuinely zero friends, spending all her time alone in a closet performing highly skilled covers and posting them online, but with anxiety so bad she'll edit video for an entire night instead of speaking, even with her family. In her first year of high school, she's been dreaming of performing on stage to stun her peers and become popular, often daydreaming to even further heights like celebrity interviews where she speaks about how much she changed. And yet, 3 years after starting the guitar, she has yet to even play it in the same room as another person. Of course, we get insight on this right away, with a rumination on her younger self thinking, would it be okay if I joined in when the other kids were having fun as a group, just before she starts playing guitar alone, in her closet, always through headphones so she doesn't disturb anyone else. When we pair all of this with her desires to be observed as someone people find cool, like the musicians who inspired her, this makes it more than just a simple, ooh, attention scares me anxiety, and more of an, am I worth other people's attention anxiety. She wants to interact with other people, maybe even craves many parts of it if we take her comedic daydream seriously, yet the stop is that she doesn't find herself worth the attention of others. There's no reason for them to look at her. I can't speak for everyone, but this is certainly something I feel holding me back. I'll see a perfect chance for interaction and often think to myself, oh, well, I would only be a bother, causing a lot of potential to be lost from a single thought. That's why today we're going to go over her story and methods, which I'll compare with my own experience for validity, to create a very rough and loose guide for that kind of connection. It's simply general advice, which has to be filtered through your own context to have a positive effect. It doesn't apply in every situation, of course, but I think it's an interesting dive into how we get out there from an anime that's well worth a watch. One of the first things that she does is a pretty basic one. She's worried about being worth the attention of other people, right? So if she thinks about approaching anyone, she's going to be pretty immediately overwhelmed with feelings of, oh, I'm probably just bothering them, or as she thinks later with the band, that maybe people are just humoring her, which would be even worse. It's a hard feeling to overcome on your own because you can't crawl into the heads of other people and understand what they think about you. All we can do is judge from their actions. So why not get them to speak to you instead? If they do that, then you know that you're worth their time because they've already chosen to give it to you. So she goes about wearing her interest in a more obvious fashion to try and catch the eye of someone else who enjoys them. She buys band merch to put on her bag, band tees to dress herself in, and CDs to keep on her desk, eventually even bringing her guitar with her in the hopes that someone will be in need of a guitarist and say something, which is what she saw in her channel's comments. The premise is pretty simple. aesthetics, this kind of expression, is a means of communication. We take something from the inside and wear it on the outside for other people to see it. Whether that's for validation or attention or whatever, the point is that it's visible and functions as a sort of chosen label. I've done entire breakdowns on the premise of labels before, but a simple way of thinking about it is to imagine, say, a group of 100 people, and you're tasked with having a conversation with one of them. The easiest way is going to be finding someone with a style that you're familiar with, or even better, a piece of clothing directly stating an interest, like a band shirt, because that means you can both communicate about something mutually enjoyed. It's a lot easier to say, I love that band, than it is to say, hello, I don't even know what comes next, because what are you going based on? Every interaction starts from some kind of need or interest, and these aesthetics are just a very easy one. After all, even with a dice suggesting topics, Bocchi still struggles because what if it lands on one you don't know about, find an interesting, or maybe even have comedic levels of social trauma around? Wearing a topic on your sleeve helps skirt past these kind of issues, making the topic a comfortable and exciting one for easy conversation. And we see that this does work out for Bocchi, as taking her guitar to school, or rather having it with her after school, leads to Nijika seeing it and asking her to fill in for her band's runaway guitarist that night at their first concert. The latter whisks her away to Starry, her sister's club, and the extrovert has officially adopted the introvert, and band shenanigans ensue from performances to promotional pictures to day trips. Everything that follows in the series, a deep bond which forces people out into new places with new people to grow and change and achieve their dreams, comes about because Bocchi decided to carry something expressive with her, and also because of desperation. The thing is, even if you have that communicative object, the other person still has to have a reason and a desire to talk to you. Had Nijika's guitarist not run away, then she would have just passed Bocchi by. She was already late for practice that night, so stopping for a random conversation would only hold her back more, as it often feels like for anyone dealing with daily life. How many times have we heard or said, cool shirt, but had to keep moving anyway because, well, life. It's not just about having the reason, but also the right time and place for that reason. A band shirt won't have the same effect in school or on the street as it would in a music shop, for example, where someone is already engaging with that passion and using free time on it. The actions you take surrounding that expression still have a large impact on its effect. It doesn't just work all the time. Further, for it to turn into a connection, there has to be the desire for that, not just interaction. Say it was just a sick guitarist and not one who ran away, then they would have only needed a fill-in for that night, so it would have just ended there. Maybe they'd keep in contact just in case, but there wouldn't be everything that followed. It was only from that space being open that it could be filled, and we all have limited spaces. A band can't have 4 guitarists. And all of this is happening a full 3 years after Bocchi started trying to get this kind of moment for exactly these reasons. For as much as it gains her these interactions, it also led to her feeling more alone at times, as no one acted on it for so long. After all, only the most bold, obvious thing she did yet actually led to something, and only because someone bold and obvious saw it. A simple shirt or some CDs wouldn't have sufficed when Nijika walked by. It had to be the full act of lugging a heavy guitar to school and back through every class just to get here. Bocchi herself knows this, saying that you can't put the onus on others and expect perfect results. All you're doing is setting up some odds and hoping that it works, unless you yourself decide to directly engage.
I can say that this is a strategy that's had pretty decent results for me. I get the I need a reason for attention vibe from Bocchi's words and actions because that's exactly how I am. The reason I stress over the worth and originality of every single video is because it doesn't feel right for me to take up your time without a real reason for doing so. It feeds into my social skills in a pretty large way as well, as I'll find every excuse possible not to talk to someone. Usually something like, oh, they're having a fun night. I would only be bothering them to butt in with all those people they know. Even as I know that in their situation, I would still love to interact with someone new, I can't push all those thoughts to the side and get to action. So I typically use clothing as a sort of a crutch. My shirts are all band and anime shirts, even though I dislike providing information about myself because that information can start a conversation. I can only have a 20-minute discussion about which order I'd rank Fall Out Boy albums in if I'm wearing a Fall Out Boy shirt, which lets someone say, "Oh, what do you think of So Much for Stardust?" So I'm glad I wore that shirt that night. It led to a cool moment. But that itself also shows the limitations, as it required a new album to be out that someone was excited for and wanted to talk about at that moment. A few weeks later, and maybe they wouldn't have felt the need to speak up and express their own desires to meet mine. And it stopped at a 20-minute conversation because I felt I was keeping them from their friends who were right over there still. That momentary lull of recognition crept in, and a pleasant but final bye ensued. It doesn't mean the moment wasn't worthwhile. Even temporary connections are very fun, but simply to say it doesn't guarantee a friend, for example. Now, I've had interactions that went for the whole night based on general fashion before, like an outfit compliment that led to me talking about what bars are around and then just to going to one of them together to show them around, or someone liking my fashion at a bonfire and basically going after someone they thought was attractive. But those interactions succeeding relied on something else. Not just my desires for them too, but their desires for them too, and also the fact that we kept them going. When those people complimented my outfit, I had to do more than just say, thanks, but instead say something about how the outfit was keeping me warm because it was middle of winter, so that there was another possible topic to jump to. And then that happens again and again and again throughout the night as conversation branches, reaching for topics to keep it very much alive. So for the lead-in of fashion to go anywhere, I first had to be a bit versed in those kind of interactions already, which comes to the next point.
Aesthetics have great potential, but it really isn't everything. It's just a primer, an easier way to start things. What happens next? After all, even with the guitar connecting her to Nijika's needs and hobby, Bocchi still struggles to speak with her on the way to Starry, and even there, she's lacked a reason for so long that she doesn't have a frame of reference for what interaction is really like, instead focusing on her own doubts. Is her tracksuit ugly? Does it smell like a closet because that's where she always is? Will Nijika rethink choosing her because of this and all her awkwardness? There's so many new factors that everything is something that can go wrong to Bocchi. She has a habit of catastrophizing, which is built exactly on this, as she'll imagine the situation, and her lack of knowledge on how they actually go leads to it ending up in utter shame or death sentences. She needs to get in there and have actual experiences to see that what she thinks are possibilities aren't, sort of like exposure therapy. It'll be seen that those horrible options which hold her back in her mind, that is what she considers to be costs that outweigh the benefits in unconscious calculation, simply aren't possible, at which point the cost is lowered and interaction is easier. In short, things have to be made to feel more natural. That's what's often holding us back from it, because even if we get to a connection, we literally don't know how to act in it. The only way to find out is by being there. But then we don't know how to act in it, so we won't be able to begin it to begin with. It's a case of needing to have experience with something to be able to experience it, almost a sort of odd paradox. As such, no amount of thought can prepare us, only experience can get us ready for experience. So how do we start? Well, a big part of this whole topic is not looking at the big picture, but rather at more manageable parts. For example, Bocchi wants to ultimately look cool playing on stage. That's the full end goal. But that's a lot at once. She hasn't even played for one other person, let alone a whole room on stage with bandmates. So even with the opportunity, and knowing that it's a stroke of absolute luck, on that night of the first performance, she can't go out. But we have to examine then, what are the parts of that goal? You can take away look cool for a moment and be left with playing on stage. And since the visual aspect of that is gone, everything associated with it is gone. It doesn't matter how she looks because she's only working on the experience of being on stage. So of course she plays from inside a cardboard box, which reminds her of her closet she plays in at home, making it possible. It's very silly, and a far cry from actually being a rocker people look up to on stage, but it does actually give her something. Now she's aware of part of what it's like being on stage with other people, to be counted in, to feel the pause for audience reaction, to feel how people do or don't react to a mistake. Even if she hasn't gained the full experience, she's gained enough that there's less which can go wrong next time and less to catastrophize over. It's been proven from experience that the world doesn't explode if she plays poorly on stage, because they did and the audience said nothing, and Nijika still wants to have her back to play again. So the next time they have to play for an audience, she has to and can do it without being in a box. And by the time of their last performance of the series, she's able to have a string break on stage and make do with an impromptu style for a solo that she was looking forward to as the way to look cool in front of her class. It was something pretty notable to go wrong, leaving her without 1/6 of her notes. It's pretty much a catastrophe. But because she's now used to being on stage, it's the only thing that went wrong. She knows the audience is going to immediately leave while she handles it for a moment. Her past experiences left it manageable, even if not ideal. So quite literally, she has taken herself out of a boxed-in world by slowly branching out, gaining elements of the total experience in smaller sections.
I think this was one of the most interesting parts for me. After the Manic Pixie Nightmare and some other events, I realized that I wanted to get out and meet people. I'd seen it, admired it, and needed it now. But I was limited to pretty much only nights, again, see long work weeks, so that limited me to bars usually, and I'd never even stepped foot in one alone, let alone doing that and ordering a drink and speaking to someone new. I had this intense desire to, but there was so much to go wrong that I would just end up imagining all these horrible interactions that would go so bad I would have to hide my face and never show up in that area again. I would just pace around my room thinking like that, and I never even got a foot out of the door. So I made an excuse to start small. The B-roll that you see in videos, that whole hobby of mine was born from wanting to have a reason to be in active areas of the city so that I would be used to the first part, just getting to the spaces I wanted to be in. I'd catch glimpses of the people inside and a bit of the layout as I went past again and again on these nights so that I could know where I'd need to walk and what the vibe was when I eventually entered. I couldn't imagine looking lost when I went in because I knew where to go. I couldn't imagine people who would judge me harshly because I saw the clientele already. It was a long process of months, going from just being out invisible to walking directly past the places I wanted to go into to finally, after pacing around for probably half an hour at least up and down the street, walking in, sitting down, and ordering a single drink while not interacting with anyone else. It wasn't anything like the goal I actually wanted to achieve, but it provided me the baseline for it. And when I started to pair that with the fashion aspects that we covered, or other excuses for interaction like arcade bars where you all share this common activity, it led to me being able to just start speaking with people because I was aware of everything surrounding the goal. Only through those kind of small steps building up was it ever really possible.
Now, there is something making all these small steps hard though, and that's perspective. What we perceive as a step won't be the same as what other people do. We see this as Bocchi is working at Starry, where she's serving customers from under the counter due to her devastating anxiety. Being inspired by the moment though, the feel of people gathering for music, all there for one feeling, she manages to look a customer in the eyes while giving them a drink, albeit with an odd expression. Afterwards, Nijika says, "That was nerve-wracking, but you've taken a step forward," which actually isn't what Bocchi wanted to hear. To her, it was like 1,000 steps. To stay above the counter the whole time, to say something polite, to maintain eye contact, to not recoil afterwards. It was many more things that Nijika doesn't even think about because they're natural to her. She's so far ahead of Bocchi that it's hard to even recognize the things that are steps to the more socially stunted of the pair. But this was a big deal for her, even as it's nothing for someone else, so she has to try and be happy having done 1/50th of what someone else could do without thinking. How do we maintain a sense of progress when we have comparisons like that weighing us down? Well, it's important to remember that this is just how it goes for learning any kind of skill or growing in any way. After all, Bocchi taught herself to play guitar alone in a closet, growing a fan base of over 30,000 people and having stunning skill, even if it doesn't translate well to playing with others. how many other people took lessons and still don't even come close to the level of skill she has at the guitar. We see this directly with Kita, the runaway guitarist who faked being able to play because she wanted to be near another band member, Ryō. But through the anime circumstances, they end up all meeting again, where Kita works starry for a night, apologizes, and simply says that she'll leave for good. It was a mistake she thought invalidated this connection. Noticing calluses on her fingers though, Bocchi sees that Kita was actually trying to learn and simply wasn't able to teach herself. She tried to do something to form this connection, but missed her chance in the same kind of way and sort of catastrophized like Bocchi always has, despite their clear differences. And much like Bocchi struggles with interaction to a level that seems comically far behind, the reason for Kita in this situation is the same to musicians. She was struggling because she didn't have a guitar, but a 6-string bass. Nothing she did sounded right because it was on the wrong instrument. Like many things in the show, it's for a joke, but it also holds meaning within it. This is her struggling because she knew so little that her criteria for guitar was simply, it has 6 strings, something which would be silly to anyone who knows anything about instruments. Just like Bocchi wondering how to interact with no bass line, Kita wonders how it's possible to play the guitar with no bass line. I'm just now realizing that's a pun. I meant it as like a floor, but a bass line, like bass, the instrument. I'll keep going now. They're just in the same place on different skills. For everything that we're good at, there are going to be other things which we aren't, because everything is an investment of limited time and energy. We have to recognize that a step is in perspective. The more we take in one direction, the less we have in others. And then something else of interest comes about from this. At the same time that Bocchi is looking up to Kita for being able to interact so easily and positively, Kita is looking up to Bocchi's skill on the guitar. Each is the novice and the master at their respective skills, taking larger and smaller steps depending. So what if they stepped together? There's no reason why they can't do this, and they do. Bocchi provides lessons on the guitar, and in a less formal way, Kita provides, well, kind of her kitara, motivating the others to enter new places and do new things. They go on a day out to the beach where they climb the stairs of a famous shrine to check out the view from the top, a novel experience for them all that only Kita would push for. Well, they skipped out on the stairs for the escalator, but they still did something they wouldn't have before, right? And motivated by her, they even try to take the same kind of pictures that she, a social media pro, would. It's a slightly different effect, but that's because it's something new. At the end of it all, they're good and bad at their respective skills, and coming together allows them to more easily overcome their deficits, learn new ones, and communicate with and over those skills, getting the experience needed for even more connections. It's kind of in the definition of a band. You take up the parts you're best at and let other people do the same to make something better than what you could do alone. But along the way, you get to take bigger steps in new directions because of this.
For me, this came down to not tying myself to the person who inspired me to go out in the first place. When I'd go out with her, it was literally my first time going to actual bars or even clubs, staying out until 2 a.m. and beyond and talking with some 10 people at least throughout the night, and she would just meet people and almost force them to be her friends. I was stunned at how natural for her it was to literally just find reasons to talk to people, whether it was outfits or asking people on the line if they'd been there before and what it was like to straight up just joining in on random conversations. That didn't always get a friendly reaction, but that only made it all the more amazing. Once that relationship died and then was officially confirmed dead when I made a whole ass essay that they saw about it, I was left with these vivid memories of how easy it all seemed, in contrast to my own anxiety over every single aspect of the process. I would often hate myself for seeming so far behind. Was it going to take me years to do what was natural for her in a single night? But I remember that there was a reason for our different skills. I wasn't used to staying out until 2 a.m. or talking with strangers because I had a pretty damn stable life. I was already making regular videos in my current style while working a steady job with a degree where I was top of my major even though I hated it, spending weekends with regular and amazing friends. I don't think it was an objectively better or worse life, but she was used to meeting new people because she would pack up and move somewhere entirely new where she'd literally have to make a whole host of new friends to have any interaction, and then get 3 jobs because she'd be fired after a couple of weeks. Her apartment was empty except for garbage bags full of stuff in the living room, a mattress on the floor in the bedroom, and dishes sitting for so long in the sink that I don't want to describe what the scene was like. The reality was just that I had other things in my life, that I was ahead in other ways. I would have an easier time catching up because of the baseline, the stability I'd provided myself. I was able to connect in other ways based on those skills, like the people I've met from doing this. And these differences are probably part of what made an attraction there to begin with. I'm a weirdo who likes to have exact plans in order to everything in my life, even to my own detriment. I plan so well for the future that I forget to live right now. And she was the opposite, someone who really could have used a little bit more structure, struggling from too much focus on right now. I don't think there can be a general statement of whether this was emotionally right or healthy, but we were able to provide those bits of things to each other to make it easier. I would keep things a bit more neat, be there and provide rides, add some structure to the nights, and if nothing else, add an intimidating body to someone who was way too free with their safety. And this meant I was able to get some exposure to the kinds of things that I only knew inside here before. Her skills were great to get me started, helped me make things natural much easier, but I had to keep it all in perspective too, that I had my own set of skills which would and did aid me along the way as I used that experience to then do it for myself.
There's a specific moment of the show that's only a minute-ish that's important to highlight, and it's Bocchi trying to enter Starry for the first time alone. She stands outside the door and paces back and forth, too terrified of the possibilities to enter, and so she passes the buck to her future self. She'll enter in 5 more minutes, and then 5 more minutes, and 5 more minutes, and 5 more minutes. This goes on all the way until Nijika and Ryō show up and go in with her, ending this half an hour-ish of torment. I like this moment because all of that expanded energy on anxiety, literally in all the steps taken, says something about its purpose. Unless there was something important about this moment, our physiology wouldn't react in this way, making us move about. The body only uses its energy for a purpose, usually to create change. If a situation is bringing us out of a comfortable state, it wants to regain that comfort. So it's pulling up that energy for her to make a change and end the situation, which is stressful. Which is why she ends up pacing. Her body literally won't let her sit still until the situation changes for the better. Knowing this, we can still pace around forever as an outlet for that energy, but think about this. Wasting it like that means we're just exhausting ourselves endlessly for no effect, no change. Unless we actually direct that energy to producing a change, it's gonna be there. And so since it will be, we might as well use it for its purpose before it wastes our energy and spirals further from there. This is why this anxiety can actually be something good that Bocchi brings to the table when the situation doesn't allow her to waste it on things like pacing, namely being on stage. Her friends say that she's always the one to pull them through tough situations during performances with a burst of motivation, and she is. We see this in their audition to get another concert, with a terrible first performance weighing their odds down, and an underwhelming current one not looking much better. As they're described by the manager, the drummer is too tense, the bassist is off in her own world, and the guitars are looking down too much. That anxious energy is building up in them and throwing off their performance. It comes in conflict with their practice, muscle memory against newly energized muscles seeking to create change because they know they need to be better to succeed. Their body is supplying them the energy to do so, but it's just stiffening them, sitting in them. What Bocchi does, taking a stomp forward and stepping up her playing, is utilizing that energy for its purpose, to change. If it's holding her back from just sitting there in her, then the only option is to do more so it's not. Instead of having it all tensed up inside of her, she lets it out and plays differently than before so that she can't be stiff from forcing the same thing as always. Her stance goes from rigid to one that's more loose and expressive, which the others take active note of and do themselves. Even the manager noticed this moment as well, as she says to them, "I think I know what kind of band you are," after her criticisms exactly to recognize this. They're rough around the edges and could be a lot better, but they showed an awareness of this and a drive to actually do so. They took that nervous energy and didn't let it stiffen them up, but directed it for what it was meant to do: create the change they wanted to see. Did they want to keep feeling this negative emotion for no reason, or did they want something to come from it? If they act on it, it at least serves a purpose rather than just stressing them out.
This isn't a Prof original, and I can't remember exactly where I heard it from first, but it's a saying that really did impact me that went something like, anxiety is your body telling you what's important. I don't think it's a hard and fast rule that applies to every situation or person, and safety comes first, but I think more average and reasonable circumstances, it can be very beneficial. It applied to me when I was getting a new job. During the interview, the manager was late, so the HR intern and I ended up just talking casually for a bit, where we got onto the topic of books and what we were both reading. It was her question, and I was delighted to answer Keimu without having to spend the next 10 minutes trying to justify well-loved literature. In the career field I'm in, this isn't a very common conversation, so I was happy to have someone there whose company I could actually enjoy. But when I started there, we were in different departments, different spaces even, so it was mostly light conversation here and there as she would pass by, not enough time for more than a bit of joking. It was right in the period where I was trying to change my life as well, so I'd always be wanting to say that we should get lunch so we could actually speak a bit more, but that was entirely new to me. To be in an office like that with all new people asking for something I had never done before, I had no experience, no basis, and not much way to ease into it. I just let the quick conversations end without that question to temporarily ease the anxiety. But this just ended up meaning I was feeling it again and again each time. My body saying that the change which needed making was right there, but I wouldn't use the energy to actually do it. I would just let it turn into negative emotions and physical tension. And then from whatever video I was watching, I heard that quote and it made sense. I could keep feeling that way over and over, or I could take that energy and do something with it so that I wouldn't next time since it was gonna be there anyway. I could use it to get over that hurdle of anxiety and have something not just easing my mind, but actively bettering my situation as I could have a brighter spot of friendship in awful days of work that I hated. So I did it. Next time I just added we should have lunch sometime, and it turned into every week on Wednesday at noon. I can remember right before she left, I was in a bad spot and mentioned how everything was feeling so boring. So the next week she had us eat lunch in a different spot just to change things up and show it was possible to ease that feeling in small ways. It was a great gesture of active care, and that and more was only possible because I decided to use that energy instead of having it use me.
Now, a harsher truth comes after this though, that anxiety in total never goes away forever. Only the specific brand of anxiety from that moment you conquer goes away. As long as you're growing and changing, facing new and unknown things, it will always exist to provide the energy to face them, with each step coming with more after it. We see this with Bocchi as there's basically this same moment of improving a performance on the fly again later. Having made a couple of fans who come to their first real concert, the girls are once again playing a bit stiff and messy from facing a nervous situation. After all, this time it's for an actual crowd, even if a small one and not just two people they already know. It's a new challenge and new ground, even if some aspects are more natural now. Through their first song, which is off-tempo and rigid, Bocchi sees the two fans' expression shift from excitement to disappointment, as the thought that, well, maybe they found an awesome local band with members they've actually spoken to, which turns into, oh, they kind of suck. Not wanting this terrible outcome, where she'd have to bear the same feelings of failed performances before, she makes an impromptu solo to lead into the next song, stunning the waning crowd back onto their side to enjoy the show as the other band members take her lead. It's like a moment of realization. That feeling means something isn't working, so why keep doing the same thing? Don't let it pull you down, use it to rise up. It's essentially the same moment as before because that's how it goes. The whole process is a cycle of ups and downs where sometimes it does feel like you're just repeating yourself, pushing through something you already have as the negative feelings come back again and again. You feel the same stiffness, the same sweating, the same stuttering and stumbling to some degree. But that actually means that things have changed. You wouldn't be nervous again if they hadn't. You can't be repeating yourself because then it would be natural. It's just a similar feeling because it's the same purpose, growth, but it's from a new challenge, meaning you've improved enough to need it once again. Because the situation isn't exactly the same, this is a concert and not an audition, a next step for a band which means a lot more, down to just the number of eyes on them and the cost of sales. And in terms of what Bocchi does with it, this is more impressive. Instead of one stomp forward, it's a whole solo where she stands out on stage and looks absolutely cool like she always dreamed of doing, and with new people watching her and thinking that about her. It's a scene I've watched again and again to chills. She has improved, so now she can do more with that same feeling than she did before. Even if it never fully goes away, it'll be for something greater and greater each time, so we might as well create change from it to get something from that feeling. And you know what comes after this fantastic moment of looking super cool, where victory was pulled from the jaws of defeat and fans endlessly watch the scene again and again? Well, she dies of exhaustion at the after party in a literal slump as everyone else celebrates. And you know what? That's absolutely fine. To be out of energy from facing this all down isn't an issue, but just another part of the ups and downs. She'll have those highs, but they need careful lows to be achieved. Not depressing moments, but little reprieves from the excitement to recharge, to not be exhausting so much energy exactly so that it can be used for more important moments later. And further, needing to recover proves that one used that energy to make a change instead of sitting in its cyclical effects again and again. To try and party after what she did on stage would be silly for someone learning the ropes like her. What's the point of just using up all of her energy and pushing the next big moment that really matters further and further away?
I guess this is the section where I have to get over myself a bit and realize that sometimes when you're writing and you think to yourself very quickly, oh, I don't have anything more to add right there, it's because you don't want to add what goes there. But I do have something here because my experience with change certainly wasn't a linear path upwards, but one where I said to myself many times, I thought I'd never have to feel this again. This was a couple of years ago on Halloween. I went on a date that was really nothing special in the evening, and I was kind of fully aware of that going into it. It was an exercise in both keeping an open mind and understanding that maybe it could surprise me, and also trying to just keep at it in terms of actually getting out and meeting people. I hadn't for a while, and I didn't want to get used to just working the night away to avoid it again. We went to some new places for a bubble tea and some food, kind of this flavors and dishes that I'd never even heard of before, let alone had, with interesting, personal, and sometimes deep conversation throughout, and left on a high note after just sitting on a low wall and chatting for a bit in great weather. I figured it wouldn't really lead to anything when we said goodbye, but I was glad that I did it to get that experience and to know what I was capable of and just to try it anyway. And I connected with someone I didn't think I would, which is unthinkable for old me, even if it was just for one night. I could have easily been proud of that, gone home right here to recharge and use that to prepare for next time. But I got a bit carried away and was looking to accomplish it all at once. I got together with some friends on the spot to end up at a college Halloween party when I was a couple years detached from that kind of life already, not that I'd ever lived it to begin with. It was a lot of bad drinks and skimpy cowgirls and dude bros broing. There was music I didn't know in a place that wasn't comfortable as the only people not in costume, and so it just ended up being me standing in a corner with my friends for 2 hours thinking, wow, we really feel old compared to college kids. I tried drinking more to get in the spirit of it, failed to jump in with the other people who were taking shots due to sheer volume of bodies alone, which absolutely shattered my confidence. I compensated a bit too much with drinks on my own and really went over the edge in terms of throwing depressants into my body. We went to a random bar after, and I put on a high-vis vest and hard hat for my friend's car so it at least looked like I was trying to have a costume, but by that point I was just so defeated I was just spiraling mentally, standing in a crowd but interacting only with my own thoughts. I couldn't face that space in that moment. After staying there for so long in two places, it really proved how out of it I'd been from the date, and now was even further to the point I was walking back to my car past these parties full of drunk kids just being happy, and I was cursing them all internally for having the gall to enjoy their time. I had to just sit in my car for a while to let myself not be a danger behind the wheel, and stewing in those feelings, I wrote this to myself that I'm actually going to have to clean up a bit to show here on YouTube. I'd primed myself for a one-on-one conversation that night, then jumped into a party scene I'd never entered in my life before and overwhelmed myself, when I could have easily just gone home, relaxed, taken stock, and been more ready and happy for next time. I could have said, "That was great, do it again," and built from that basis. But I rushed into it to try and get results and ended up just making myself feel horrible about the whole thing, even though what those people had isn't even really what I wanted. And I struggled to get out for weeks after this because I spoiled all my energy and confidence at once, so all it really did was set me back. Change has a lot of ups and downs, and we can't help that. But we can be aware of them and know when they're coming and act accordingly. If other things are happening to drain your energy, or you already did more than usual, or it's just not the right day, you don't have to. Remember, no one is behind, we're just different. We all have a time to rest and a time to act.
One of the most important aspects we see covered in Bocchi's growth is also that you're not going to connect with everyone. Some people will just ignore you or scoff off the interaction or anything like that. The feeling of, maybe I'll just be annoying them, exists for a reason, because sometimes it can be true. For one reason or another, justified or not, purposeful or not, some people won't want to connect with others. And that's not just fine, but sometimes even better for us. Kikuri, a drunk and outgoing bassist, finds Bocchi alone with her guitar and, through some drunken outgoingness, coerces the latter to play on the street together to advertise her upcoming concert. Of course, Bocchi isn't big on the idea, but failing to say no in her awkwardness, she ends up going along, deciding to shut her eyes the whole time to manage. After all, only the manager and her bandmates have seen her play live at this point since, Cardboard Box. Kikuri actually suggests the eyes closed deal just to make it through, as she herself understands needing something to cope with anxiety. That's why she explains she drinks so much. But she also says, you're not in combat with the people in front of you before they begin playing. For Bocchi, it's another case where she starts off technically well, but stiff and not very impressive. Nothing worth going to see again. With her eyes closed, she can't see what the audience is feeling, because on a street like this, she's assuming it's like speaking up to talk to someone on the subway. Am I just wasting their attention, bothering them, making them hate me? If she looks, surely everyone will be annoyed at her for taking up their time. They'll probably be laughing at her in comparison to Kikuri. But when one of the two girls who becomes her fans later speaks up and says that Bocchi is doing great, she opens her eyes and sees that the only people who are paying attention are, the people who are paying attention. Why would someone who is annoyed or not caring stop and watch? They're just off in the background, unconsidered, already moved on and out of her life forever, and actually they were never in it to begin with. They aren't even a consideration. With her eyes open, she realizes this, literally sees it, that the only people who are here are the ones who stop to hear you play, and it makes her job easier. She can keep her eyes open, or one eye at least, and perform a bit more loose and free, a bit more risky and skillful, because these are all the people who actively wanted to see her succeed. They're responsive and into the moment with the same hopes that she has, and so she impresses them into buying tickets to the concert. In no way is she actually bothering them or even capable of doing so, because they have to choose to be bothered, and who's doing that? She can only gain attention from people who are open to giving it in the first place, and that means it can't be wasted when gained. So what this means is that you don't have to appeal to everyone. It's a waste to. You can just be genuine, something with much more ease and greater results. For example, Bocchi is also the lyricist for Kessoku Band, since she dabbled with it in her spare time. But everything she came up with was quite depressing and lonely, given that's what she was feeling to inspire them, and mostly still is now. So she tries to change up her style and write generally, creating a hopeful song about achieving dreams which she imagines a popular band would play. And Ryō doesn't think the lyrics are good when she shows her. Now, what's important is how Ryō expresses a more personal take, being a lot better. First, the lyrics aren't the only appeal of the band. Kessoku Band has some fairly outgoing and normal other members, including Kita, who will be singing what Bocchi writes. People might not enjoy the words themselves, but how they're said and by who, the instruments behind it, the appearance, the feel can make a big difference. After all, how many songs do you love without knowing all the words to? Maybe you just like the rhythm or the melody, maybe for a certain kind of day or night, the feel it provides. We just have to like something about it, not know and care for everything that's a part of it. This seems to hold true as Bocchi's two gained fans seem more like Kita or Nijika than her, but they still find something in the music. She doesn't have to impress them with something super personal because they've already decided to pay attention and be open to enjoying it for what they enjoy about it, vibing along to an upbeat song with excitement. She doesn't have to give them what they didn't ask for. The same thing is true of people. They don't have to be interested in every part of us to connect, they just have to have one that they like which spurs things forward. And secondly, as Ryō says, even if the lyrics do limit the audience, just like before, that's kind of a good thing. When Bocchi gives her lyrics from the heart, she responds that it might not connect with too many people, but the ones it does, it will hit deeply. And after all, what's easier? Considering a bunch of people who won't pay attention to begin with, who you don't know and what they might like, and having to win them all over, and how it'll be different between so many groups like that? Or just say something true to yourself. That's probably why Bocchi struggles for so long when she considers how to write a popular song, because it really is so many considerations. How do you reach every single kind of person? But then she can hand in great lyrics super quickly once she goes for genuine expression. Even if the former seems like a better option in theory, leading to more possibilities, in practice it's harder, more possibilities meaning more to face and make natural and worry over. Like everything else, thinking small picture can help. And the hits deeply part of it is true as well, as after this point Bocchi and Ryō, the loners of the group, share a seemingly nonsensical friendship where they laugh about things no one else gets and without words, even when Bocchi was terrified of Ryō's cool presence before. But now that she's expressed something genuine, which she could do to the right, small audience, it's led to much greater results than anything broad, because Ryō and her see true aspects of each other that they enjoy, rather than shallow outside factors. A smaller effort of just saying what she was feeling allowed someone else a much better basis to truly connect than anything popular would have.
I think this last section is what helped me the most out of everything on my journey. What was holding me back from other people the most was not being the person curled up inside of me trying to get out. Every interaction was muffled, anxious, and sporadic as I was attempting to appeal to a crowd which wasn't meant for me, desperately hiding myself behind myself. And for most of the time, not even knowing that this is what I was doing. To connect with anyone there, it was like a mile-long sprint to try and convey what I was feeling in the right words to reach them, those who had no understanding and little desire to. So I just didn't. Like I was raised, I was being the person someone else wanted me to be. Every conversation felt dull as nothing true to me was ever expressed. Only in rare cases did I have connection and not interaction, because what was I offering? A general appeal that was good for one look, but with nothing greater that could be found when you went deeper. They weren't finding a person, but just an act. I've put years into fixing myself, and I still get nervous going into the store where business people and house spouses shop, or into a restaurant with lighting that's a bit too bright and people who aren't drunk enough, or the doctor's office full of normal people with normal issues. But a month ago, I went to a party in an abandoned lot in a skirt and danced with strangers, and every single interaction there was an excuse for connection. It was people in the same place with the same thoughts and feelings, just looking for that subtle in to take and create a whole conversation and possibly more from. It was the people that I easily appealed to and the people who appealed to me without an effort, but just as we were. Where those little genuine details explained much more than general signs ever could, because we knew what we knew. And with the right audience, the ones who already stopped to hear me play, it wasn't like an effort at all. I was just existing, and it was just happening around me with the easy choice to allow it as such, and the ability to make something from it with little more than hello. And recognizing that, a lot full of people who were there for exactly the same reason, I could keep my eyes open and play. I could take this form that has no rhythm, which has hardly been seen to dance, and which has never truly sung in front of another person, and flail around in what could loosely be called dancing just like everybody else. We kept each other going in that moment as I watched that no one knew how to dance, so we all knew how to dance. Their expression fed mine and mine theirs. And I think that, more than anything else, is connection. A kind that can span an entire block just the same as it fills the space between locked eyes and laced fingers. The kind of thing that happens when we learn who we are and what we want so that the path is clear to connect. There's a lot I don't know about other people and connecting. Many days I can't even bring myself to check messages in a basic server. I have no idea if these words will reach you and inspire some kind of difference. Maybe it's not the right time or the right audience. Maybe you have some things to work out on your own still. Maybe your steps are too fast or your picture looking too big. But I know some things for certain. That there are no enemies in the crowd, that there is no skill that can't be learned in small steps, and there is no timeline for growth. That nervousness is important and that everyone has an audience. That you need no excuse for attention and that you are worth and can find connection. Anyway, that will wrap things up for this one. I don't know if this video is actually going to get an outro or not because, I don't know, I hate going right from like face to camera stuff, but who knows. Hopefully this mic wasn't horribly getting that tiny little scratchy hair sound on it the whole time. Still working out a lot in this setup and I'm still bad at it. I still keep trying to rush it and do it all at once, and I think I actually need to tone down how many different shots I'm doing per video. I think I need to relax and just do like a different one for each video, not change it every like other scene, because you run out of places to do that in one small room and it's a lot of moving this whole big thing around. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. Well, I do have more to say for this one. Actually, I cut a lot of sections. I worked on it for a while. I didn't think it would be as long as it ended up being. It was a process that I really can't say anything on it because I was just writing it at a time where I had no ability to write, basically, where there was just so much going on that I was stressed out and couldn't form the kinds of thoughts I normally do. And I think through a lot of nights I pulled it through, but it was one of those things where you just never are certain of it because you had this doubt the whole time. So you have no idea if it's actually bad or if you've just gotten that idea in your head, and I guess we'll see. You all can let me know. But I also think that this is a good spot to say, and again, transparency is always asking for comments helps this video do well. But I do look at them and do think it'll be a good thing for other people to look at to say what your own experiences with finding connection and growth were in the comments of this video. That way we can see the kinds of things that I didn't pick up on or that I deleted because I didn't have the right words for them, or things I just wasn't even aware of in different experiences that someone else can see them and go, I can make it through that too. I can connect with people. I can follow their lead and be able to do this thing. I don't know. I could write. You can probably hear the train bells. They made them so loud now. But maybe that's a whole thing to write anyway. It would probably just be some vague philosophical ramble, but it feels like so often everyone wants to connect with each other. Like we're all out looking for that, and so often we can't or don't take it or find ourselves in a space that like one night where it's just not possible because something happened. I think fostering some ideas that could lessen those would, at least for what I want out of life, make it feel a lot better. So I guess there was kind of more to this than I realized, and I think you find that a lot with writing, that I think that's like the subtext work, like where it's not the message hidden in it, but like the reason you didn't even know about, like why you were writing it, and then you figure it out and you go, holy shit. Yeah, I think I just like people and I like people connecting. Anyway, wow, that was Oh, okay. Important links in the pinned comment. You got Discord where we hang out and do stuff. We got Patreon where these lovely people support me, and I'm doing my first Q&A over there where supporters can ask questions and I'll answer them in a little podcasty style. But you also get your names above me like they have right now. So a big thank you to them for supporting me and really helping me push this into the future. But a big thanks to everyone, to you for your time and letting me connect to you for a second. And I hope I'll see you again soon.